Hey there, my name is Rachael Kalaki.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Shelby, and welcome to the Magdala Podcast.
We know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem.
The need for women to be accompanied in their journey toward healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here.
Magdala is a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom from sexual addiction through support, community, and accountability.
Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to discussions on how to live fully as a Catholic woman.
You are not alone, and wherever you are on your journey, we welcome you to this table. It says the actual recording is higher quality. I think I'm pretty high quality as it is, but apparently the recording that you are hearing right now is even higher quality. Rachel, on this fabulous Friday, what quality do you feel
Good question.
at the moment?
Good little small group question. I'd say I feel pretty high quality. It's been a good week, a full week. But yeah, I feel good. I don't feel like my quality needs a ton of enhancing by Riverside right now. Riverside. Anyway.
You are enhanced enough, that's for sure. Your self is enhanced, and today we are talking about the self woohoo transition. So if you are joining us, we're doing a little series right now going through restoration of the 4 relationships, and we have been through the relationship with God and the relationship with others, and today we are talking about the self, which truthfully is one of the hardest relationships to tackle. When I was thinking about this, just earlier this week, I was having a one-on-one call with one of the ladies in my own small group, and she articulated so beautifully this struggle that every single human experiences, which is the way we talk to ourselves is nothing like the way we talk to other people, right? And so she's describing her experience of a fall and all the lies she's believing because of it. And she's able to articulate, she's like, if my accountability partner were to say these same things, I would immediately be able to shut them down because it's not true for her. But for somehow, like for me, why do I believe that? Or the other thing that comes to mind in a lot of the retreat ministry I've done, there was an 8th grade retreat that I helped lead for a while where one of the speakers was talking about loving God, neighbor, and self, and just outright to all the 8th graders said, which of these 3 is the hardest? And all 200 of them, each and every week, would say self, like immediately. Like even at the age of 12 or 13, they knew that there was this difficulty in our relationship with self. And I think especially as we talk about the disruption of sexual sin in our relationship with ourselves, this is probably one of the hardest places for us to go because we're so aware of that. We're afraid to see what's deep in there. It's just difficult to go into this relationship with self. I mean, Rachel, why do you think it's so hard to go there? Why is it so hard to love yourself? Why is it so hard, that relationship with yourself? Like there's something there that's too difficult.
You're with yourself all the time. None of us want to be alone with someone that we don't like, literally 24/7. So there's a lot of pressure on the relationship with the self, and sometimes it just feels better to ignore it. And just kind of skim the surface of yourself, understanding yourself, loving yourself. Um, because yeah, it spares you the trouble of finding out that you just really don't like yourself all that much, but you're stuck. So yeah, I don't know. It is by far, I think, the hardest. Because it's also hard to find the balance of, and we'll talk some about this, I'm sure, but it's hard to find the balance of loving yourself, but being humble and realistic and basing your identity not in your own love for yourself, but in the Lord's love for you and letting your love for yourself come from that. Because we live in a very like self-care focused, indulgent um, culture that kind of says that self-care and self-love is like the answer to every insecurity and every problem. So we have to find the balance here. But yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, at least in our masturbation episode, or sorry, why our masturbation is wrong episode, just in speaking about that, sometimes it can be hard. One of the many reasons that sometimes we're in denial of sexual sin is all of the positive elements of it, seemingly, specifically towards the self pleasure, self care. That sometimes it can feel that when we are separating from these instances of sexual sin, that for a lot of our women who are not caring for themselves, that this could be one area where they feel that they are most caring for themselves, where they're able to indulge, where they're able to feel liberated. And so even being asked or trying to stop this habit can feel almost a disruption of self. Am I not cared for? And that can sort of be its own cycle, and that's one thing I can share about how sexual sin disrupts our relationship with self. It is just that it turns you inward. You become self-focused, and even then, in trying to run away or flee, like as the Bible says, like from sexual sin, you still find yourself very self-focused. And as you're describing, it's a balancing act. It's not at all bad to be self-focused, but when that becomes the idol, then that's where it gets a little skewed. And so turning inward is for sure one of those things that comes from this disruption of
Yeah,
relationship
Aquinas even
with
backs
self.
that up. He says that lust inherently makes you selfish. Like that is ultimately the main fruit of this, or fruit, we'll say, yeah, of the sin of lust, is it makes you selfish, makes you
Yeah.
self-centered. And um I think we know just from work, like interacting with people in that inward focused headspace, it can be difficult having existed in that inward focused headspace. Uh we can understand, but yeah, that was not a great way to live. And I remember thinking
Yeah.
at the time, uh, when I was more actively consuming, it's like, yeah, there were occasional times where I noticed my own self-centeredness and how focused on myself I was. And also,
Yeah.
when I would notice it, I would realize how truly exhausted I was by living that way. I'm not sure if that's how you felt, but I was exhausted by focusing on
Mm.
myself all the time and how something served me or made me feel. Um, yeah, it was just exhausting. Paying way too much attention to my emotional process, my emotional state. Um, and I think we'll get into this in a little bit, but that's part of why I think the healing involves stepping out of the self in service to others, in self gift. Like we don't wait till
Yeah.
we are quote unquote healed to do that, because that's part of the journey of healing is offering yourself in service and in gift to other people. But I was exhausted by being so inwardly focused literally all the time.
Yes, yes. Oh, totally relatable. And I think a lot of my um I'll say self-centeredness in a large bulk of my recovery, or when I was very actively in a ton of sexual sin, manifested in self-focus, self-fixation on my own body. And so just because of the nature of sexual sin, I was constantly aware of how my body was responding in consuming pornography. It shifted a lot of the ways that I thought my body should look, how it should respond to other people, how it should move, creating this self-fixation, yeah, that led to so many issues with my body. I mean, my story involves a history of eating disorders that were already very present before actively engaging in pornography, masturbation, those sort of things. But when those two things intermingled, combined, mixed, whatever words you want to use, it took a different flavor. Is that a good? It took a different tone in the way that I would dislike my body. So previously, prior to an over sexualization of my body, I could see myself disliking my body simply on the grounds that it felt like thinner people were more loved. I guess like that could be the thought process, I could say. Um, but as I started engaging in sexual sin, that dialogue became more of a um, th- thinner people are desired more, and thinner people receive greater sexual pleasure. That the twisting of what I was seeking in my relationship with self, relationship with the body, was now sex, that somehow sex had become the end goal, because of this hyperfixation on self and on the body, that now all of the lies had to do with sex. Again, having to do with the self. I was so hyper fixated on what I could gain from this, right? Like what guys like me at this moment. How can I receive more pleasure? But I saw that really manifesting in the way that I viewed my body too. That fixation on self was not only my own heart, but also physically how I was appearing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Like, 'cause I think that is a very common experience of women in our organization, but that's also backed up by scientific research. I think there was one study I read in my certification program where it said something like 60% of female sex addicts also experience some form of body dysmorphia or an eating disorder. So this is a really common effect of consuming pornography for us, and other forms of sex addiction, but specifically pornography because it gives us such an inaccurate picture of the female body. Um, I didn't find as much disparity between myself and my body in my consumption as much as I felt it between, I'll say, like myself and my femininity. Like I felt this huge divide in
Yeah.
myself um, when it came to being a woman. Like I felt out of touch with womanhood, or more like it's more like womanhood was something that came easy to other women. It felt like femininity was this effortless thing that they just
Mm.
had. And for me, it felt like a costume I put on. And I didn't feel like a man underneath or something like that. I just felt like not a woman. I felt very distant from femininity. It felt like I was faking it. And yeah, I had coffee with a friend even a year ago. Um, and this friend's beautiful and super devout and really excellent at her job, which is just really wonderful, invested in her community, all sorts of things. Really beautiful woman. And we were just having a really good conversation about purity culture and its effect on us. And we were talking about pornography and sexual sin and all this stuff and how it affected both of our stories. And I said like, yeah, femininity for me has always felt like it always felt like a costume I put on. And she just like sat back. She's like, oh, you said it. Like
Oh.
that's how I felt. Like that's how I felt. And so I think this is a
Mm.
common fruit too, because you feel that way first because hearing over and over that this is a man's struggle, and we've talked about this in other places, but that sexual sin is a man's struggle because men have way more desire than women. Men like sin in this particular way. Women are just too emotional. Like all of the weird stereotyping that happened to us.
For sure.
You start there,
Yeah.
but then also just because sexual sin itself, like it places a wedge between you and your sexual expression in a healthy way. So it makes sense that it was kind of this two-pronged thing for me, but it wasn't until I started healing and was in recovery that I realized how distant I had felt from femininity and how pornography inadvertently
Mm.
through many different channels had taught me that femininity has to look one way. Whether that's the womanhood found within pornography, again, kind of like what you're talking about, of this is what it means to be desired and desirable, or also the femininity of
Yeah.
what it meant to be a Catholic woman, and good Catholic women do not watch porn and do not fall into sexual sin. So that's lost to me as well. Um, that's a lot of details, but I know that's more of the disparity that I experienced in myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the enemy does not want women to be comfortable being women. The enemy is clearly on an attack of gender right now, and even as you were describing, even like feminine expression and what that looks like. And I feel like for me, that was attacked in. I've shared part of my story, but really a lot of the reason I started dating women was because of an introduction to lesbian pornography, and there was this hyper fixation on femininity, on the beauty of femininity, that probably was. In combat or in tension with my own heart that didn't feel feminine, wanted more femininity, say that 3 times fast, wanted more of that in my life. And so, in embracing the beauty of femininity, I found myself, chasing after women, dating women, being in a long-term relationship with a woman that I remember, I'll call that sort of my feminist era. I had a black crop top that said feminist, and I wore my like heavy eyeliner, and it really was this idolization of what uh, woman is. And yet, if I really look deep down, then Rachel, it was probably covered up by so much shame of how much I didn't feel woman enough. Like whatever that was. I was trying to put on this big show embracing all things female. I'm even dating a female pro, all the pro women marches stuff that I was really into. But it really probably came from this place of I just feel so not aligned with who I feel like I'm supposed to be as a woman. And I truly believe that, yeah, sexual sin had a major component of that. One, not only influencing me to like start gazing at women in a sexual way, but also as you're describing that there seemed to be some conflict with being a woman who has sexual desire. Though I wasn't completely living into my like Christian identity at the time, I didn't experience the same lies of like Catholic women don't do this, but I for sure experienced this sense of disruption of self because apparently, like women around me weren't experiencing the same sexual drive that I was. So it seemed to insinuate that that meant that something was wrong with me. I'm not woman enough. Does that mean that I'm man? Does that mean that I have to try to embrace femininity in another way? But I found myself feeling conflict in that way. But it's true that sexual sin will disrupt the way that we view our femininity. That is for sure. And I know the experience of pretty much every woman
Well,
probably.
yeah, it's funny coming back around like as adults and realizing in honest conversations with close friends or people who I would have stereotyped at the time as like the effortless kind of feminine woman, she was struggling too. Like she didn't feel effortless, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
whether it was with sexual sin or something else, like there's so many different kinds of wedges that can be driven in, but and that's another fruit of pornography is in pornography and sexual sin in general, but I think pornography in a very particular way, it just creates comparison, like such insane comparison. You live like comparing yourself to other people. And you talked really honestly about that in our last podcast, which I super appreciated. Of just like, yeah, um, you are never ever enough, like in yourself. Um, and yeah, again, that's exhausting. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. It's exhausting to feel that way.
The Magdala podcast is sponsored by the Catholic Theology Show, presented by Ave Maria University. The Catholic Theology Show covers themes such as the value of a Catholic higher education, religious liberty, how to pray, the philosophies of St. Thomas Aquinas, and more. Stream episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and learn more by visiting the link below.
Yes. Yes. Well, even as you're describing this exhaustion, the image that comes to mind is like Hannah Montana and like the best of both worlds of her like living
Yeah.
this hidden life. And I know you remember the show, and I'm sure there's several people here listening who understand what I'm describing, but there was this exhaustion in the first few episodes of the show where Hannah slash Miley, like her friends didn't know, so she was constantly running back and forth, changing costumes. It was this exhausting nature of the hidden life of the double life. And if pornography and masturbation, those sort of sexual sins do anything, it makes you hide in shame. You are hidden. And then in that hidden life, you are constantly just more aware of what other people think of you, yet nobody has any clue that that's going on underneath. Well, maybe like us in this work, we're very aware that's going on underneath in a lot of people, but the comparison game becomes so strong because if you're so self-conscious, so aware of your own hidden life, and again, this hyperfixation on self that says it's only me, nobody else ever struggles with this, and so like what I described at the beginning, the ways that we talk to ourselves, like I can't believe you would do that, blah blah blah. We would never talk that way to somebody else. But in this hyperfixation on self, we see that the hiddenness takes such a toll on our relationship of self. One of the ways that the enemy gains so much power in sexual sin is because we are so hidden and in the dark. And if you don't mind me shifting into even like restoration, how we can work to restore this. I mean, one of the ways we can work in restoring our relationship with self is get out of the dark, however you can, whatever your flashlight is, whoever your first person to tell is. Maybe it's just listening to this podcast and knowing that like there's other voices out there, like finding some way to get out of the dark, to be able to see yourself again, how others see you and how the Lord sees you specifically. That is one way that we're going to get out of this hidden, self-focused, hyper-fixated nature that is just not bringing us to life. So let's get out of the dark. Amen.
Yes, and I say like to add on to that, speaking specifically to like the body disparity thing. You know, you want to recommend self-care. I want to say do like hard but healthy things like for your body. Not meaning like break your back, but um, yeah, cook food at home, cook whole nourishing meals for yourself that you enjoy, that taste good, that you're excited about. Set an alarm for a certain time of day that gets you enough sleep, and wake up when that alarm goes off. Don't hit snooze. Like, do hard but healthy things for your body. Incorporate movement in a way that blesses your day and rejuvenates you, not depletes you. Um, I think a lot of reconnecting with our body, letting go of shame there, um, is finding that balance between discipline and honor, like discipline and grace. Because I think you can spend a couple hours at the gym doing quote unquote healthy things, or like trying to do healthy things, but you're actually just idolizing yourself, and you're actually just depleting your body and hurting it, and using it
Yeah.
more. So I think, but then you know, conversely, there's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of laziness that we get really accustomed to when we're in recovery or trying to be in recovery, and I think you have to kind of partner with grace against that too. So finding the balance of like reconnecting with yourself in ways that are difficult but healthy and holy. I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your language of discipline and honor and finding this balance, because I think that's also with the self, how we need to work in combating the mind, right? As we're engaging with our own relationship with ourselves, looking at the sinful life we've been living. How do we look at ourselves with honor and love, and yet with discipline? That when I'm falling into sexual sin, how do we restore this relationship with ourselves? The sacraments, going back to confession, receiving Jesus in the Eucharist, asking for forgiveness, those sort of things. In some sense, is a discipline. Like you need to discipline yourself, acknowledge that this is wrong. For some women, that can be very difficult, and it can be very easy to be defiant in saying, "No, I need this thing." And so, some of us need to fall more in the line of discipline, and yet, I know there's many other women who need to fall in the line of honor, because discipline to an extreme then becomes scrupulosity, and we can't go that far, because that's never going to heal our relationship with self. But coming to this place of honor and respect and love, looking to the Gospels of how Jesus spoke to women in sin, specifically sexual sin. We have multiple occurrences of that. And his language was nothing but honoring of these women, yet in discipline, the go and sin no more. Like you can go, you're free, but you sin no more, girl. Or think of the woman at the well. He goes, "Where's your husband?" She says, "I don't have one." He's like, "Yeah, girl, because you got multiple." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" But then she left running away saying, "Let me show you to the man who told me everything I ever done." She felt so loved by the way that the Lord honored her. And so, as we like restore this relationship with ourselves, that both in body and mind, being able to find that balance of discipline and honor. And even this could be a good reflection place of the people listening. Like, where on that scale do you find yourself? And where do you need more of? Like asking Jesus for the grace to give you more of that as you look to
That's a great
restore.
question. I also think I said this earlier, but stepping out in service, not waiting until you're quote unquote perfectly
Yes.
healed, because newsflash, that never happens. To serve and to love other people. A really key part of my recovery was right when I was entering kind of into my first phase of long-term sobriety, we'll say, in college. I was a young life leader with, yeah, a ministry called Young Life, super beautiful. But I was essentially a youth minister for some really impoverished communities in my area. Um, they were from different Christian denominations. They were from different backgrounds and cultures than me. Like there was a lot of differences, sometimes even language barriers. And I just loved them. I loved being with them. And they just received me and my very limited, very messy, very young and immature outpouring that I was trying to give them as a young college student. And
Mm,
um, I would I would go to the different like young life activities or lead them like 3 or 4 times a week for about 2 years because there's just so much life
mm,
in doing that and stepping outside of myself and making myself a bit uncomfortable to love other people. So whatever the opportunity looks like, I think stepping out of yourself into service, whatever that means, whether that is a volunteer opportunity or whether that's pouring yourself into a relationship that's in front of you that's asking for more, as long as that's healthy, of course. But like, or stepping up at your parish and like
mm,
finding a way to serve parish ministry more. Like these things are, um, yeah, we go out in service and we actually learn who we really are through it. And it kind of calms that inner dialogue. It gets us out of that inward battle that we're constantly in with ourselves. So I'd say that's a huge part of healing relationship with the self too, is actually look outward towards others for a moment and let that teach you who you actually are.
for sure, for sure. I think it really does calm that spiral as you're describing, to be able to invite other people in and to focus not so much inward. Another thing that comes to mind that sort of kept me trapped, I think, for a while, like inward, thinking inwardly, was how much shame and frustration I had specifically with myself. And one of the ways that I found in restoration was writing letters of self forgiveness. In the healing journey, there's so many people that we have to forgive. Oftentimes, maybe someone that was involved in sexual sin with us, maybe the person who first showed us content that we didn't want to see. And yet, I feel like oftentimes in the journey, we forget how much we need to forgive ourselves because I've just heard the story time and time again that um, I'm literally remembering a woman that I talked to maybe a week or two ago, but basically was saying like I blame myself for everything. Like if family dynamics are off, it's for sure my fault. If I don't do my job right at work, it's for sure my fault. And so then when I look at sexual sin, everything's for sure my fault. And I think it's a tendency of a lot of us to try to blame
Mhm.
ourselves for everything. And obviously, there's an ounce of truth to that because we're all broken and we all contribute in some way. Yet it's usually not to the extent that we make it out to be. And so, just a habit that I know I've done in several
Mhm.
seasons of my life is writing a letter of self forgiveness. I have a memory or two of me literally writing down a letter and saying, like, Annie, like, I forgive you for. Specifically, it usually has to do with, I'll say, things of revolving sexual sin, my femininity, more major themes in my life. And I remember I would sit down in adoration and I would read this letter to Jesus. And I'm not saying I felt fireworks exploding, but I did feel that whatever this controlling part of my heart, almost this grasping, this like I have to stay closed, clenched, hidden, whatever that part of my heart, I did feel
Mhm.
it like start to open because truthfully, like I had the key to unlock this hidden part of my heart. But I've been holding on to it because of all this shame that I felt for myself because I'm supposed to deserve feeling bad because it's all my fault. And yet the Lord forgives me. And so if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. And I should be able to receive that mercy. So that was definitely a helpful tool of mine in the recovery journey is actually seeking my own self-forgiveness, the mercy that Jesus already gives me, but being able to
Totally
receive
agree.
that
I've
myself.
I've written similar letters and they were very powerful for me. And that's part of why they're in Magdala's curriculum now. That's why they're one of the activities. And um, I believe in our forgiveness session is that's the activity for participants is to write a forgiveness letter to themselves or to perpetrators in their story that they feel ready to forgive. So I think that's huge. I also think on the femininity front, there's a couple things that helped me um, in that kind of healing the divide between myself and my femininity. Um, is I stopped letting kind of tropes, I'll say, about femininity define uh, what I thought of it. Like I introduced myself to more deeply to female saints who I felt wrote about femininity in a way that spoke to me. St. Edith Stein has been, I think, one of the biggest. How she writes about womanhood was something that I felt really resonated with who I wanted to be, and so um, or just like encountering other uh, holy women or good good female minds on this kind of stuff, like Dorothy Day or Mother Teresa. Just like this, there's a dynamism to femininity that I think we lose a lot. I know Shelby and I recorded the podcast episode on the feminine genius and just how that term kind of gets tossed around and it can become really impoverished if we don't let it have its fullness. But I just stopped believing, like, if something hit me as kind of like a cliche about femininity, I just kind of let it be that. And instead, I just looked for things that really spoke to me about what my heart was saying about womanhood and how I was living it and I was expressing it. And then second with that of like this healing with femininity was just, it sounds superficial, but just like, uh, finding feminine expression through my personal style has actually been very healing of like what clothes make me feel
Yeah.
comfortable, confident, and like myself. I I want to stop either hiding in my clothing or trying to look like everybody else and trying to look what I think women should dress like and letting trends dictate how I dress. And trends are sometimes fine, sometimes you want them and it's fine, but I found it very healing for my relationship with my womanhood to dress in a way that makes me feel like I'm actually expressing it again in my unique way in the way that only I can. Um, and letting that affect um just kind of my bodily life. So that's a small but perhaps more fun part of healing, I think, is finding that personal expression. And whether that's letting go of being so tied to clothing. For some women that might be the healing is like you are just as beautiful in gym shorts as you are in dresses, like, and just kind of learning to love the body that you're in. But then I think for some of us too, it's like um, learning to learning to perhaps put a little more effort in for the sake of self-expression. So that's another small aspect of
Yeah.
my healing.
Yes, yes. And I feel like that describes practically and tangibly what real restoration what that looks like on this side of the kingdom in ways that you are still wounded with your body or your femininity, but finding your own way out of it, or what you were describing, this idea of being very particular of who and what you allow to speak into your life. You found the saints that really resonate with your own hearts, and so those are the words that you're listening to. You found the fashion freedom that speaks to your heart, and you're not listening to trends or what other people say that you should be doing. It's this reality, like real restoration in our relationship with self. It is not that you're doing and looking like what the ideal put together woman is doing, but instead you're restoring, yes, your own individuality. You're restoring back to your own childhood innocence of, like you brought up clothing. Like, I just feel like restoration of self is like the 6-year-old girl who's like learning how to dress herself and puts on like mismatched socks and like her dress on backwards and puts a tie on her head, and she's like, I feel like a princess. And in like that chaos, that almost comfortability in her mess and brokenness, that must be like our image for what a restored relationship of self looks like. It's not the put together woman who has these perfect, you've seen those like get ready with me morning routines. Let's get up at 4 a.m. and do all these
Those
kind
cannot
of
be
incredible things.
those
Like,
those
just
are not
horrible,
real.
just horrible, those sort of things. Oh, I hope they're all memes. I laugh at all of them now. It's that's not true restoration of self. The true restoration of self is bringing all of our brokenness to the table, to our friends, to Jesus, coming to terms that not everybody's gonna like what's going on with self, but that's okay. We're living for the Lord, not for the world, and so letting the right
Mhm.
sources speak into you and embracing who you are, just as the
Amen.
little girl is.
Amen.
Amen. Well, ladies, that's all we have. Today, we have one more episode left, so tune in for then. Catch ya on the flippity flip. Quote Michael Scott, quote Annie Hand.
Thanks for listening. Check out more podcast episodes, blog posts, and how to get involved with Magdala by visiting our website, magdalaministries.org. Your love is meant to change the world. We hope to see you soon.